born. Lambis, please tell me when I am live. Hello everyone. Good morning everyone. Good afternoon. Good evening. I am Antonis Polemitis and this is session 1 of MOOC 18, Introduction to Digital Currencies. First, I would like to apologize for the delay in starting the session. We're going to talk about exciting technologies of the future, but today we failed to have my webcam working. But now it appears to be working. The Lambis is telling me the mic has a lot of white noise. Are we really having that difficulty? Give me a second. Let's see. Can you hear me better now? Mano Lambi, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me better now? How about now? Can you hear me better? Noise on the right audio channel. How about now? Now, still have white noise. Interesting. Is this better? Worse? Better? Okay, if we're only on the left side, but the noise is still there, huh? Well, the noise is gone because I stopped speaking now, right? What about now? Now we're okay? How about now? Sorry, I'm watching the chat to see what's going on in the chat, make sure the noise is okay. Okay, look. All right, I think we're good enough. We got to get going. We need to teach the session. So, again, sorry for the delay. I have done this over 100 times, and I don't think this has ever happened before. So, my apologies. We might be heading to the 4th Industrial Revolution, but sometimes technology will do this to you. So, we will run the session for an extra 18 minutes to do the complete session. And for those who had this scheduled only for this hour and cannot stay for the extra 18 minutes, it's okay. We will record it. It will be available to watch afterwards, so you will be able to watch the whole session. So we're going to pretend that it's not 5:18 in Cyprus right now. We'll pretend that it's 5 o'clock. We'll do the full hour session like we did it. Again, I'm sorry for anyone whose schedule I've disrupted, but it will be available recorded, and we can start that way. So, first, let me welcome you to the course. Let me welcome you to the University of Nicosia. I'd like to do a little bit of background on what this course is, why we're teaching it, what the oh, I'm going to try one last. Does that help? Does that help now? On the noise. why we're here, what the purpose of this course is, what the University of Nicosia is, and what we hope to accomplish this semester. So, very quickly, a bit of background of the University of Nicosia. The University of Nicosia is the largest university both in Cyprus and we think in Southern Europe that teaches in English. It is, on the whole, a fairly traditional normal university. We have 14,500 students in 7 schools, 20 academic departments. Many of the students are here in Cyprus. Some of them are in online, primarily master's programs. If you came to visit us on campus, you would see a university campus similar to what you'd imagine. We have a medical school, we have sports teams, we have a wide range of majors. We're considered a comprehensive university. And we have been active in online academic education since 2011 in general. And so we do have quite a bit of experience in teaching online. The university as a whole is ranked in the top 2 to 3% of universities in the world by Times Higher Education. We're in the bracket 600 to 800 last year, and we'll find out soon where we'll be for next year. For the Americans joining us, we're ranked similarly to a good state school, a good, I don't know, SEC university, Clemson, a University of Alabama, something in that range. And in Cyprus and Greece, we're number 6 among all the universities in Cyprus and Greece. And in the School of Business, which is where this program is located, we're ranked number 1 in Cyprus and Greece. So we're overall a good, normal, traditional university. And the reason I say this, because it might be a strange thing to say, there is one area where we're different, and it is the area that we're discussing today. And that specific area is cryptocurrency and blockchain. And in cryptocurrency and blockchain, I think we are, by most metrics, the major innovator in the university field, and by most metrics, number 1 in the university field. And I'll talk a little bit about our history, our track record, how we got here, because I think it's good context for the course. In 2013, we made 3 decisions. The first, but these 3 decisions were all based on an overall theory. And that overall theory was that Bitcoin was important, but decentralized consensus that underlies Bitcoin was very, very important, and that from this idea of decentralized consensus, of crypto assets, of public cryptocurrencies, of public blockchains, however you want to think about them, we were looking at a 30 to 40 year trend in a different way to organize, initially databases, but then a whole other set of human activities, because databases are what drives the internet, and it's what's underlying the internet. And here you had a different form of database in a way, whose major difference is that it was decentralized. And we made the decision that we thought this was a very big deal. And this was an unusual decision for a university. At that time, almost everyone thought Bitcoin was some type of strange tulip bubble or a scam or some weird thing weird tech people were involved in. Quite frankly, it's 2022, it's 9 years later, and many people still think that, right? But back then, almost everyone thought that. And so the view we had then was unusual for a university. But we believed it strongly. We had studied the topic, and we decided that no, we believe this is actually going to be important, and this is going to be one of the foundational parts of the 4th Industrial Revolution, right? That, you'll have machine learning and artificial intelligence and quantum computing and AR and VR, but also we'll have blockchains will play a critical role. So back then we decided to do 3 things. We were the first in the world to accept Bitcoin for tuition. We were the first in the world to teach a credit-bearing course in cryptocurrency, which is this course that I have been teaching with Andreas Antonopoulos since 2013, and for the last few years with Yorgos Yaglis as well, George Yaglis, who was one of the co-instructors, Professor Yaglis. And we were the first to launch a master's degree. And all of these things started in 2014, the academic programs. And if we fast forward to today, to 2022, what's happened since then? Well, I believe we have the world's largest team in academia working solely on cryptocurrency and blockchain issues. If we add up the faculty, the staff, and the researchers working on this topic, I think we probably have 40 to 50 people working on this topic. I think it's the largest team in the world. That's number one. We have several hundred students in the master's degree. I think it's the largest degree in the world focused on these topics. We've had over 100,000 students come through our MOOCs. This MOOC, which is Introduction to Digital Currency, another MOOC, which is Introduction to DeFi, Decentralized Finance, that has been now running for about a year. And then we're very excited. Next week, we're going to launch another MOOC, an Intro to NFTs and the Metaverse, that not only will it be a MOOC like this one is, but we will also be teaching it in a 3D environment. So it won't just be on YouTube like this one is. We're going to try and teach it in a metaverse environment, and we're going to try and teach it on chain. So we're going to try and make the whole student interaction be on chain. So across these three MOOCs, we have over 100,000 students have joined. And then some other interesting data points. For the last 3 years, we have been the academic lead for UBOF. UBOF is the European Union Blockchain Observatory and Forum. It's the strategic advisory body to the European Commission on blockchain issues. And so every couple of months, we write a report along with our consortium partners there on different topics for the European Commission. A few months ago, we were selected along with INSEAD to be technology advisors to their FinTech Advisory Board, which includes blockchain issues and then broader FinTech issues. So both the European Commission and the European Central Bank, among a lot of wonderful universities, have selected us to advise them. And so if we add it all together, we have a lot of people here working, doing interesting things. We've had a lot of students who have joined the programs and I think have had a very interesting experience, and a lot of them have gone on to do very many interesting things within their career. And we're advising probably the two most important institutions in the European Union on blockchain issues. This is the high-level summary. There's dozens of things going on. It's super, super interesting. And I think I can say with confidence, if we're not number one, we're in the top handful in the world on this topic. We spend a lot of time on this topic. We care deeply about this topic, and think we're quite broad on this topic. Everything from technical research on consensus algorithms all the way to topics like, what are the legal implications of blockchains for securities regulators? I noticed in my email today, we'll be doing another training for another central bank in the European Union, again on blockchain type issues. So that's the background. We'll talk a little bit about this course specifically, because you're in this specific course. This course will run for 12 weeks, and this course is designed as an introductory course to how crypto assets work, how digital currencies work. It is a mix of technical sessions. Most of those will be taught by Andreas Antonopoulos, who is an absolutely wonderful person and literally wrote the book, the first book on widely accessible educational book on Bitcoin was written by him. He has a very deep understanding of the technology behind Bitcoin and behind Ethereum, and he will be teaching the technical parts. And then George and I will be teaching somewhat more applied parts. How do we think about crypto assets versus central banks versus financial institutions in the context of an innovation framework, and so on. If you do not have a crypto background or a strong crypto background, by the end of this course, you will have a very good foundational understanding of the key mechanisms by which crypto assets work. And why is this important? So we don't get into smart contract platforms like Ethereum in this course. Right? We don't really talk about NFTs in this course, which are a form of token on, in this case, a smart contract platform like Ethereum. They work in slightly different ways. But all of this started with Bitcoin. All of this started with the logic of the Bitcoin blockchain. And to truly have a good understanding of how other blockchains work, other crypto assets work, we think it's actually helpful to understand the first one, the fundamental one, the breakthroughs in the fundamental one, because everything else is a design deviation from that. And there's gigantic, almost religious level arguments in the crypto community if those deviations are for the better or for the worse, right? The Bitcoin team thinks they're for the worse. The Ethereum team, let's say, thinks they're for the better. But in order to have an appreciation of those discussions, an understanding of what decisions are being made, an understanding of the pluses and minuses, I do think it is important to understand the basics. If you don't understand the basics, it will be difficult to understand anything else. So, when you leave this course, you're going to have a better understanding of the fundamentals of crypto assets than I would say 99.99% of people. I mean, even a lot of people working in the space itself don't actually understand what they're talking about, right? Like they might have a partial understanding, an incomplete understanding. They might have some things mixed up. They might sometimes say buzzwords, but not know what those buzzwords mean. If you really follow through this course, you will have a good understanding of these topics. Now, I mentioned in the beginning that this is a credit-bearing course. What does that mean? Well, you can take this course in one of two contexts. You can take it as a form of professional development, as a form of lifelong learning, as a professional certificate, in which case you will follow the course, you will take a quiz at the end. If you pass the multiple choice exam, then if you pass that exam, you will earn a professional certificate from the University of Nicosia. That certificate will be notarized onto the Bitcoin blockchain, as we've been doing now for many years. We were the first to put all our diplomas and certificates permanently in the Bitcoin blockchain, and your certificate will be also. And that's the one pathway. The other pathway is for students who will, or think they will, later attend the MSc in digital blockchain and digital currency. And those students will have to take a different type of examination that matches our internal regulatory standards for a degree program. And those are students who will go on and complete the MSc. Now, if you do so, this course counts as the first course of the MSc. So the MSc is 9 courses. This will be the first course of the MSc. And so you will actually earn credit for this course towards your master's degree. Who's the MSc for? Well, it's for someone who has a perspective that crypto assets, digital currency, this world of decentralized consensus could be important and could be something that he or she might use in their career. It does not matter what your career is. And I think this is an important point that some people miss. The MSc is not just for technical people. It's not for business people. It's not for lawyers or auditors or bankers or software developers. It's for everyone. There are 2 tracks in there. You can take a more technical, more programmingly oriented track if you're technical in nature and your career is technical in nature. And you can take a more business-oriented track if your career is heading in that direction. So what has happened with students and then alums of this course is a wide range of very interesting professional outcomes. Some of them, a good chunk of them, actually go on and found their own business in the cryptocurrency space. They're entrepreneurial oriented. They make a startup. Some of them go back to the job that they were working at a law firm or a bank, or one of our first students was from a central bank. And they become the in-house expert on crypto assets and blockchain. And that's really interesting, right? Because these topics are going to continue to become more and more important. They are not trivial to understand. And so any organization that comes across these topics, if they say, oh, look, Bob or Sally are the experts, they're going to call them, and that should lead to increased and better career opportunities. And then the third bucket are folks who are career changers. They're in a more traditional field and job. They're not going to go to a startup because that's not their orientation, but they do want to go into a faster growing field, and they use this program as a way to be attractive to employers in the crypto asset and blockchain field. And so almost the whole time we have been involved in crypto assets, demand for people with relevant crypto skills has exceeded supply of those people. We'll have big companies call us and say, look, we're looking to hire 200 blockchain graduates. I say, then to work in, I don't know, consulting, Deloitte or Accenture or what have you. And then we can say, oh, great, we have a big program and a lot of graduates, and the number of people who want to work at Accenture might be like 10 or 5 or 3. So I do believe if this is an area of interest, if it's something that you can get passionate about, the general demand and supply parameters of this profession are in your favor. And it does not mean you have to switch industries necessarily, right? If crypto assets and blockchain become what we think they're going to become, they're a horizontal technology. They're a horizontal technology like the internet, like digitization. They're going to touch upon every industry. So not everyone needs to become a Solidity engineer to participate in this field. You could be the person at an audit firm who knows how to audit companies in this field. And my guess is you'll get a variety of exciting assignments if you're that person, because it's the newer area and it's the area you'll have less competition from others. So the nice thing is you can take the course, the MOOC. You'll learn some things during the MOOC. You will see if this is an area that is of interest to you. If it is just of interest at the professional certificate level, you finish with a professional certificate, you've joined a great group of alums. A lot of people put their professional certificate on their LinkedIn page, and a lot of people have been hired even just from the professional certificate. But if you want a more extensive qualification, if you want deeper knowledge of the space, if you want to be able to operate at a higher level in the space, then you can choose to continue to the MSc. You need to tell us before the end of the course so that you take the correct examination and assessment. And then you'll have completed the first course of your MSc, and you'll have 8 courses left, all of them online, all of them in English, to finish the program. So this is the general broad context and logistics of the program. The couple of other technical topics. We have, I think, 2, and Lambis can correct me if that's not correct, and if it's 3. We have 2 TAs in the program, Lambis and Manos. And I'm waiting for indication from Lambis if there's a third. I might have missed it. They will be the ones who can answer all of your logistical questions, all of your procedural questions, and in many cases also some of your substantive questions. They will be around in the LMS, Moodle. They will be around on Discord. They will be around by email. They should be your first point of contact. I get a lot of messages. You're welcome to send me a message on Twitter or on LinkedIn or by email. You're very welcome to. But my response time is likely not to be as good as Lambis or Manus. And so I would recommend that if you're looking for assistance on any particular topic, you go to them first. Also, if it's something that in the end requires me or requires Andreas or requires George, they also know how to reach out to me. So I'd work them into the loop, and I think you'll get answers quicker and more efficiently. One thing we're doing this semester is we're going to be using Discord for student support, but not just student support, student discussion. We've been testing Discord over the last year. We tested it first with the DeFi course. It has been very effective. It is a messaging platform in effect, but it allows you to have many, many channels, many effectively chats going on at different times on different topics. And so in addition to being helpful for support for the program, we're going to try and pull in all of our students across all of our programs into the Discord server. And so I encourage you to go there, because in addition to student support, you'll be able to interact with other MOOC participants on other MOOCs, other MSc students in the more general channels. So, as I'm a touch older than some of the team members, I did not use Discord until sometime in 2021. There was a little bit of a learning curve for me to figure out how to get in and out and what to click on. It's not 100% intuitive, but once you learn how to use it, it is actually very efficient and very helpful, and I think actually a big step up from whatever chat system we were using before. So I encourage you to download Discord to your phone and or your computer, join the Discord of the University of Nicosia, join the correct channels for the MOOC, and be there as well. I think it's a great place for us to chat. And so I think that's it on logistics. I'm checking to see if there's anything. Lambi, is there anything else I need to cover that is logistical in nature? I'm giving him a second just to see. Okay. Okay. In that case, with this done, we can get into the substance. And the nice thing is, you won't have the logistics discussion again. We've now dealt with it at the beginning of the course. The rest of the sessions, we will get into the substance. And today, session 1 is to lay out the purpose of session one is to help you think through currencies. Many people think they understand currencies because everyone uses currencies. But it's not clear. I don't think it was clear to me necessarily before I started becoming more involved in this program exactly how to think about a currency, exactly what a currency does, and exactly how different things that are currencies or like currencies may or may not be good on the dimensions of a currency. I tend to do the more flipped teaching method. Now I think George and Andreas will do something different. They'll go through slides. I'm not going to go through the slide deck. I expect that you will read the slide deck in advance of these sessions. We provided a week in advance. I think it is important that you read it at your own time and pace. And my favorite thing to do in these sessions is to have an active discussion. It's why we ask for questions in advance, and I try and go through the questions, and if we can get the right type of questions, I think it can lead to a very interesting and engaging discussion that is more interesting than me reading the slides to you. I will mention one thing, though, before I get into the questions. If you remember anything from this session, for the rest of your lives, you need to remember the three major functions of a currency. Those are medium of exchange, store of value, and unit of account. It is a very useful framework. People tend to think of them combined. If you're a civilian on this topic, if you haven't thought about this topic carefully, you will likely think of them as a combined topic. They are not combined. Currencies might have all of these three functions, but they're different functions, and different currencies have them to different degrees. Let's review a little bit about what they are. The first one is the medium of exchange, is when you use a currency to pay for something. So I go buy this cup of iced coffee. I give the store €3. They give me a cup of iced coffee. I have used it to make an exchange. It's your day-to-day understanding. It's your day-to-day understanding of how people use a currency. The second function is that of a unit of account. And a lot of people think this is the same thing, but it's actually something different. A unit of account is in which currency is the price of something denominated. So this coffee, the unit of account is €3, and the medium of exchange is €3. They're the same. In most national, sovereign, fiat currencies, they are the same. If you travel in the Eurozone, you will see things denominated in euros. You will see prices in euros. You get on a plane and you fly to America, and you will see items denominated in dollars. But this does not necessarily mean, it is not actually required. It is not actually required to switch to settle a unit of account in the same medium of exchange. And I'll give you two examples where they're different. Let's say we are going to settle a transaction using Bitcoin. On Bitcoin, Bitcoin is rarely a unit of account. Right? It's rarely a unit of account. It is sometimes a medium of exchange. So, all the famous examples, I'm going to go buy something with Bitcoin, a subscription to an online service, a pair of alpaca socks, a donation to a political party. Most likely the actual unit of account is priced in dollars, but it is settled in Bitcoin. If you pay for the MSc digital currency at the University of Nicosia in Bitcoin, we are going to invoice you in euros. And then when you pay, you will pay in Bitcoin at the exchange rate at that time. So the unit of account is euros, the medium of exchange is Bitcoin. And you say, okay, this is a niche case. When does this really happen? Well, it happens to people traveling. I have a Cypriot credit card. I also used to live in America. I have an American credit card. If I pay in with my American credit card, let's say I'm paying on European Amazon, it asks me, do I want to settle in pounds or in dollars? The unit of account on amazon.co.uk is pounds. I can settle, I can have the medium of exchange, might be in dollars, might be in pounds. They are different functions. They are functions that are mostly the same in most countries, but not necessarily. These are the transactional functions. The third function is a little bit different. It's the store of value function. And here there is a very big difference between the view of crypto people, particularly Bitcoin Austrian economics people, and modern economists who believe in the Keynesian system of basically modern central banking. A store of value allows you to store value from the present to the future. I have $100. I don't want to spend it now. I might want to spend it in a week, a month, a year, 10 years. Can I do so? Can I take my wealth and move it into the future? Can I store my value and move it into the future? Well, the answer is yes. And then again, the question is, well, how well? This is where people talk about inflation, right? In the short term, none of this actually has mattered, right? Like through most of my life, inflation has been 2 or 3% in the last 20, 30 years, which means the value you are losing annually is 2%. So if I start on January 1st with $1 and I want to spend it on December 31st, I'll have about 98 cents to spend, right? Something like that. So I've mostly stored the value, but not perfectly. And one of the things that people who are not big fans of fiat currency say is like, well, but if you held it for 50 years, you'd start with $1 and you'd be left with like 10 cents at the end, which is true, because that 2% would happen every year. A traditional economist would say, well, currency, cash, is not meant to store value over long periods of time. You should have invested it in something productive, a stock, a bond, and then you will likely earn a rate of return. The last several decades, this view has been predominant, that inflation was under control in well-managed economies, that currency could store value from one period to a future period, that there was a slow deterioration every year of its value, and it was manageable, because in the short term it's perfectly fine. In the long term, you should have a series of investments and you should be able to keep up with or surpass inflation. This is an interesting year, 2022, in that for a variety of reasons, some of them having to do with the war in Ukraine, some of them possibly having to do with after effects of the response to COVID, we don't have 2% inflation. We have, in Europe and the United States, something closer to 10% inflation, which is now meaningful. It's much higher than the central banks want it to be, and it is at a point where it starts to get disruptive. If you tell people that their $100 become $98 by the end of the year, it is manageable. If you tell them their $100 become $90 at the end of the year, and by the end of the next year their $90 become $81, I think most people will feel that is not great, that they won't be thrilled with that outcome, that the currency is not serving as a good store of value. For many, many years, this is the exact scenario that Bitcoin thought it would perform very well in. That in a world where fiat currencies have high inflation, that people who didn't like that, who wanted to store value into the future, would say the fact that Bitcoin has a fixed supply means it will be resistant to inflation. So far, this hasn't happened during this period of quite high inflation. Bitcoin has effectively been flat and down quite a bit from when all asset prices were higher last year. This might change, of course, in a month, a year, or so on. But so far, we haven't seen an asset manage to hold a fully stable unit of account, store of value, and then medium of exchange during these complicated periods. No currency is perfect on these dimensions, right? None of them. All of them have theoretical trade-offs. And even beyond the theoretical trade-offs, a lot of them perform differently than you would expect. If you had asked anyone 5 years ago on the cryptocurrency side, would the price performance of Bitcoin be better when inflation was 2%, as it was in 2020 and 2021, or when it's 10% in 2022? Almost everyone would have told you the latter. And maybe that will happen, actually, I don't know. But that's not what's happened so far. Bitcoin over the last 2 or 3 years has followed more generally the rise and fall in prices in technology stocks, as opposed to reacting to inflation. Also, I think if you had told anyone a few weeks ago that the Great British Pound would reach $1.04 or whatever it did the other day, that would also sound highly, highly unusual. And yet it did. So one of the things that I would like you to leave with is, yes, these are the three functions. There are theories about how they work. But none of these theories are like physics. None of these theories are like the law of gravity. None of these theories are like, oh, well, the speed of light is exactly 186,000 miles per second. They are closer to hypotheses. They're closer to mental models Even the smartest people in the world sometimes predict things that turn out not to be true. And so you should keep a sense of caution about whatever side, whatever people are saying on either side. Whether it's the fiat people saying negative things about crypto, the crypto people saying negative things about fiat. None of it's 100% true, right? All of it has some interaction with reality, and when it interacts with reality, sometimes things happen that people don't expect. So, I'm going to stop the lecture component here, because really what I believe people should take away are these three things: medium of exchange, unit of account, store of value. I use this framework constantly. When people say, evaluate this token, or look at this national currency, and I see some data and facts about it, I run it through this framework. Is it being used as a medium of exchange? How is it being used as a medium of exchange? Who uses it as a medium of exchange? Is it being used as a unit of account? Same questions. Is it being used as a store of value? How is it performing as a store of value? It is, in my opinion, the framework you should use to filter things. And as you get more information and have more data and become more experienced, you can make more nuanced judgments. But this is the right framework. So I'm going to stop lecturing here, and I want to get through some of your questions. And depending on how things go, I'm trying to keep a little bit of side eye on the chat to see what's going on there and see if any of these are things we can work into the questions. First question. Bitcoin skeptics argue that it is not a productive asset. For example, real estate generates rent and equities generate dividends, but Bitcoin does not generate anything. What is your take on this? Well, I'll give you two answers. I'll give you the narrow answer, but also the broader answer. The narrow answer is, if you think of Bitcoin as a currency, why would you expect it to generate anything? I have 50 euros in my wallet right now. It's also not generating rent for me. It's also not a productive asset. What are the functions of a currency? It's a unit of account. My 50 euros do that. It's a medium of exchange. It works. It's a store of value, sure. Less good store of value this year than it was last year. And the expectation that it should be a productive asset is not, for me, a correct expectation. We don't demand that of other currencies, right? So I agree it does not generate rent the way real estate does, and it does not generate dividends the way equities do, but I wouldn't necessarily expect that. I will say there are people who might argue it does have a productive use, and that productive use is it allows you to buy space on the Bitcoin blockchain to make a transaction. It's a highly abstract thought. I think it's right in a way, right? That it's a form of commodity money, and the commodity being provided is blockchain space, blockchain transactions. And I think that's technically right. But that's a very abstract answer. It's a very highly theoretical answer. I think the simpler answer is Bitcoin is best thought of as a form of currency, commodity money type currency, in which case you would not expect it to be productive. In fact, I would almost tell you that the opposite is true. If someone, last year, there were a lot of companies saying, I will offer a yield on your Bitcoin. I'll make it a productive asset. You lend me your Bitcoin. You notice this, they say, you put your Bitcoin on my platform, but basically is you lend me your Bitcoin, and I'll give you a 5% interest rate. A lot of people did it, and a lot of people lost their money because these companies went and did risky things with people's Bitcoin and came back and said, oh, sorry, we don't have it anymore. We lost it. The people that we lent it to didn't pay us back. I did not lend any Bitcoin to these companies because I assumed they were doing something risky with the Bitcoin. Because I've had Bitcoin for a long time, and when I look at the Bitcoin that I have, it does not generate a yield for me. If you're not using it to transact, it just sits there. So where is that yield coming from? Well, that yield is coming from them doing something with your Bitcoin, and since they weren't being fully transparent in what they were doing, I said, I'm not interested in doing this. So generally in the crypto world, when people say, oh, this asset is generating a yield, you should ask yourself very carefully, where that yield is coming from. Because if it's not built into the protocol, it's coming from somewhere else. And that somewhere else usually means someone is doing something risky with your assets. Next question. Could Bitcoin's inherent characteristic of specific supply, I think this means fixed supply, render it a store of value within the crypto sphere? Could Bitcoin be improved as a general store of value by changing its characteristics? Well, I think what you're describing is what Bitcoin fans, and more generally the crypto sphere, thinks of Bitcoin's main point in the crypto area. That it has a fixed supply, and that it doesn't change at all. I mean, the supply definitely doesn't change at all, and generally the Bitcoin developers are very conservative about taking on changes. And so that this gives you confidence that they won't change the supply, and this should give you confidence that it can be a store of value. I don't think it would be improved by change. In this theory, that Bitcoin is a store of value. It's a store of value by virtue of it not changing. So I don't think changing its characteristics would improve people's feelings about being a store of value. I think it would detract from them, without taking a judgment on if Bitcoin is the right model or not, right? But Bitcoin's internally consistent model is, in fact, that the supply is fixed. It's going to change not at all in the supply and very rarely in anything else. And so that should give you confidence to make it a store of value. Can Bitcoin replace the gold standard? However, as a physical asset, gold can be held securely in hand, free of internet outages or a hacking threat. I will conclude with this. Gold has always been storage of wealth, and Bitcoin may very well be that in the future, but is too volatile to replace gold at this time. Do you agree? Well, most modern currencies are not in a gold standard. So it's not a question of replacing it. Most modern currencies are not backed by hard assets. They are fiat currencies. So that's number one. Number two, gold can be held securely in hand, free of internet outages. Yes, I guess what you mean, it can be transacted free of internet outages. Bitcoin doesn't go away if there's an internet outage. It's right there waiting for the internet to come back on, right? And so gold can be transacted even if there isn't an internet, which is true. But also gold can only be transacted within reach of your physical domain. So if I had a bar of gold here, I could trade it with someone here on campus in Cyprus, but I couldn't easily send it to New York. If I had Bitcoin, if the internet is running, I can transact with anyone on planet Earth, and if it's not, I can't. It's not clear to me that easier to transact is in Gold's win category. I think it's more in Bitcoin's win category. Or a hacking threat, sure. Bitcoin is, you have to take appropriate measures to keep your Bitcoin from being hacked. But my understanding, people who have a lot of gold also spend a lot of money building secure facilities to keep your gold from being stolen. Again, not totally clear to me that this is a benefit for gold, not for Bitcoin. Has gold been a store of value for much longer than Bitcoin? Absolutely. Is Bitcoin more volatile than gold? Yeah, mostly still. Does it mean it's too volatile for people to use it as a store of value? Well, obviously not. People are using it as a store of value. That's why Bitcoin has been worth between $500 billion and $1 trillion recently. Has it caught up with gold? No. People think gold might be worth $10 trillion. So Bitcoin is much younger than gold, more volatile than gold, stores a meaningful amount of value, but much less than gold. So I think the market, in fact, is taking all these things into account. In the current inflationary environment, Bitcoin has not acted as a hedge against inflation. On the contrary, it has done just the opposite. So can we conclude that it is not a hedge against inflation, or am I missing something? This is what I had mentioned earlier, and I think this is a very interesting point. Bitcoin post-COVID fell as low as $3,000, right, in the early days. And then people printed a lot of money, and then it went all the way up to $69,000, and now it's back to $20,000. I believe during this period it is accurate to say that it traded more like an asset that benefits from inexpensive money and less like an asset that is counterinflationary. Now, we've only had high inflation for a few months, so I don't think the chapter is closed. I don't think you could go tell Team Bitcoin it's over, it's conclusive that it does not counter inflation. It might be that it needs more time. It might be that people need more time to realize inflation. It might be that people don't think inflation is going to be permanent. I don't know. Does anyone know what inflation is going to be in 6 to 12 months? I'm not sure. But I think it's true on the time frame of 2 or 3 years, it has not traded as a counter-inflationary asset. It has traded with the broader cycles of assets in general. So, very interesting question that remains to be seen. This is a very good question, and it is a question that I think is generally misunderstood. Why would a central bank of a nation knowingly and willingly devalue its currency over time? Does this not mean that each currency is on a sure path to hyperinflation, which will then need to be solved by creating a whole new currency and starting over? Well, the short answer is no. I mean, from 1970 to today, we've been off the gold standard in the United States. The EU is not on the gold standard. Nobody's gone to hyperinflation, though people will say, oh, but look, this year's been bad. We'll see. We'll see how much this year is a permanent state of higher inflation or if it was driven by supply blocks across the world. What's the reason central banks want a slight positive amount of inflation, let's say 2%, is because they're also afraid of deflation. what is deflation? Deflation sounds bad, but what does it mean? It means your currency is gaining in value every year. Why is that not a good thing? My $100 on January 1st become $102 at the end of the year. Well, the concern is that people stop spending in that environment. And let's think how this might play out. I'll take an extreme example. Let's say you knew every year the value of your currency would go up 20%. So you have $100 on January 1st, and you think, oh, I'd like to buy, I don't know, a pair of jeans. They're $100. They're nice jeans. And you think to yourself, you know, if I can just wait until December, I can buy those jeans, and also those jeans are going to be $80, and I can buy them and have $20 left over. And let's say everyone does that. So nobody buys jeans. And now the company who's making jeans has a crisis because nobody's buying jeans, but they have employees and factories to pay. So they're panicking and they say, oh, you know, I'm going to drop the price to $70. Now everyone says, wow, look, the value of my dollars are going up. I can buy more jeans for my money. Let me wait. Now the company panics some more. They drop it to $60. And you get into this cycle where in extreme cases, extreme deflation is also very disruptive because people don't spend. And if people don't spend, there's no production. And you might say, well, no, people shouldn't spend, they should save. But then what an economist of this type would say is, the real economy is not the dollars. The real economy is how many products and services we produce every year. And so one thing a currency should be doing that's not on that triangle is ensuring that there is just enough activity in the economy that we haven't caused inflation, but that everyone can have a job and everyone can go to work, because if they go to work, they will produce goods and services, and we will be absolutely richer over the course of the year if everyone works over the course of the year than if, let's say, half the people are staying home because there's not enough demand to do things. So the countries aren't doing this because they want to create a hyperinflation crisis. A modern, sophisticated central bank is doing it because they're afraid of deflation. Now, could this go wrong? Could this get away from you? Could you have a slight inflationary environment that becomes more inflationary and then it does get away from you? Yeah, sure, it has happened. But there's no one useful economic mental model, as there's no free lunch. You can risk inflation, you can risk deflation. The more you risk one, the less you risk the other, and so on. And so it is an interesting topic how to handle this, and people have very definitive views on this. Good question. Can CBDCs and private cryptocurrencies coexist? If so, what would be the role of private cryptocurrencies? CBDs are central bank digital currencies. These digital currencies are basically the fiat currencies, but available online in a digital internet native way. I don't see why CBDCs and private cryptocurrencies couldn't coexist. Private cryptocurrencies and fiat currencies exist now. And most fiat currency is mostly digital, right? I mean, most fiat currency is not pieces of paper and coins. They're mostly in the databases of the banks and central banks. And it seems to me that fiat and cryptocurrencies coexist just fine. They have different purposes, in my view. Some crypto assets are used effectively to drive different networks that do different things, smart contract networks, Oracle networks, and so on. Some, like Bitcoin, that are store of value oriented, are playing a store of value role, like gold. So we can put the questions together. Can CBDCs, can fiat currency and gold coexist? Sure. Why not? There's no reason they couldn't coexist. Now, are there regulatory pressures sometimes in private cryptocurrencies? Yeah. Do national regulators get sometimes alarmed by cryptocurrencies? Absolutely. Where they really get alarmed is with so-called stablecoins. So stablecoins are cryptocurrencies that are trying to track the price of a national fiat currency, like let's say $1, USDT, USDC. These are cryptocurrencies that are meant to be stable versus $1. This tends to create alarm bells in central banks because they feel these are stepping into the domain of areas that they're responsible for. You know, the Federal Reserve believes it is responsible for the stability of the dollar and has a whole bunch of rules of if you're giving out instruments that are supposed to operate like dollars, let's say bank deposits, you have to follow a whole bunch of rules so that you don't create sudden crashes and chaos in the dollar zone. If someone is making a private stablecoin, which is like a private CBDC, you see a lot of anxiety coming from the central banks because they say, wow, if these get significant, they could be disruptive to my own currency zone. Whereas if something that is not tracking the dollar becomes significant, it's generally less threatening to them. You know, Apple stock has been very successful versus the dollar. Apple has a larger market cap than Bitcoin. But nobody thinks that Apple is a threat to the dollar, right? Nobody expects that Apple stock will be 100% stable. And so if you say, well, Bitcoin is not stable and it's volatile and its price goes up and down, and I don't think the US dollar system is all that bothered by that. On the other hand, if you make a large US dollar currency and then you fail, this is something that central banks feel is stepping into their area of expertise, area of responsibility. And so I think we will see the stable coins quite heavily regulated. I mean, they already are to some degree, but quite heavily regulated in the US and the EU. I'll grab a question from the chat because I noticed this and it relates to this. People are asking about Luna. Luna is a stable coin, what stable coins or purported stable coins come in two formats. One format is that they are collateralized. Someone says, to take an extreme example, I have $10 billion of US treasuries. I'm going to issue $10 billion of Polemitis dollars. You can always exchange them back for a US dollar, and you know I'm good for it because I have $10 billion of treasuries, which also trade as a dollar, right? There's also have been attempts at what are known as algorithmic stablecoins. These stablecoins are not backed by collateral, and they try and do different token economics, token games, token incentives to keep the token stable vis-a-vis a dollar. My 80-90% sense is that this is never going to work. I leave a 10-20% chance that someone thinks of something very, very smart that does allow it to work. But so far, basically all algo coins have been a failure. Some of them have been a absolutely spectacular failure, and Luna, which is mentioned in the chat, is the poster child of a spectacular failure of an algo coin. Luna has, it's outside of the scope of today's session, had a complicated mechanism that was supposed to keep it stable. But it was a mechanism that was vulnerable to a bank run. And that's exactly what happened. And once that mechanism starts, the peg falls and it just collapses on itself. And that's exactly what happened. And so it's one of those dreams of the crypto industry to have an algorithmic stablecoin. And I'm not sure if it's a dream of the type of like having a perpetual motion machine. There are not great examples of someone who is not the currency issuer themselves being able to run a peg to the currency issuer in general. I mean, even nation states run into problems. Nation states that try and peg their currency to someone else's currency, often with both large currency reserves and the economic earning power of a country, most pegs eventually fail. You know, I was watching a panel with Druckenmiller, who, with George Soros, broke the peg of the British pound a few decades ago because he was talking about the latest events in the UK. And that's a great example. I mean, the UK is a G7 economy. They had a peg on their currency, and a hedge fund, and then later other market participants, managed to push them off the peg. And so, given that this is what happened to like large multi-trillion-dollar economies, I'm rather unconvinced that someone can just make a magic formula that always keeps something worth the same as something else. And this is the type of question and critical thinking you can practice by imagining you are going to do it. Imagine that I, Antonis, said I am going to create billions of dollars of US dollar equivalents, and somehow they'll track with the US dollar under all circumstances. And try and think through why that would be the case, why your friends, why you would accept my Polemitis dollar instead of a US dollar. Imagine why people would accept your Philippe dollar instead of a US dollar. It's not easy. And because it's not easy, it hasn't been solved. And the best case is that it's a very hard problem to solve, and the worst case is that it's actually an unsolvable problem, and the only successful stable coins are going to be collateralized ones, or the actual on-chain stable coins are going to be CBDCs. Because obviously the Federal Reserve can issue a stable coin that always trades with dollars, because the Federal Reserve can create dollars on demand, right? You can give them your stable coin and they'll give you a dollar back, and nothing has changed for them. The Federal Reserve cannot run out of dollars. I can run out of dollars, but the Federal Reserve cannot run out of dollars. And to grab one more question, and we'll come off stablecoins. Some people say USDT is uncollateralized, or at least not fully backed, but it's not an algorithmic stablecoin. Correct. USDT is not an algorithmic stablecoin. USDC is a collateralized stablecoin. All of the skepticism in the market about USDC that goes back to 2018 is that it is not fully or properly collateralized or collateralized the way USDT says it is. And this has been going on for a long time. I mean, it's been going on since 2018. And the reason all of these concerns happened was at some point USDT had some of its reserves seized by the government, and it was under collateralized for a while, for sure. But it more or less managed to hold on to the peg for, again, a bunch of technical reasons. And so the skepticism on USDT is not that it's an algorithmic coin, is that maybe the reserves they claim they have aren't exactly what they're claiming. But that's never been proven, and it has stayed stable more or less consistently through this whole period. Based on what must be your bird's eye view of the cryptocurrency and blockchain industry, where do you see the role of CBDCs, if any, in the next 5 years? Well, I think everyone's going to do a CBDC. And this was not 100% obvious before. I went back and found some of my old writing on this topic from 2013. And I had predicted then it would take 10 years. And for this to start being taken seriously by central banks, and that's about where we are now, where a lot of serious central banks are making serious efforts to launch CBDCs. The Chinese government has launched a CBDC. I think the European Central Bank will be next. And I think the last of the major ones will be the Federal Reserve. There's some counter pressure in the United States that it might not be a good idea. But I think in Europe, it's almost a sure thing they're going to do it over the course of the 2020s. And I think their perspective has been primarily defensively driven, the central banks, that they've seen that people find value in using a decentralized, a digitally native coin, and in absence of being able to do this, having a programmable digitally native coin, in absence of being able to do this with a fiat currency as it is now, people are using private cryptocurrencies. And I think the central banks are thinking about it mostly defensively. They say, like, well, if we offer the ability to do these types of transactions, buy an NFT or make an online payment natively in our own currency, well, then we'll capture some or a lot of that market share and continue to provide a more stable currency environment for our citizens. So I think they're going to happen. I think it's going to happen. And almost a sure thing, I think, at this point. So follow-up to this, which was, additionally, how could the blockchain industry change with its thousands of cryptocurrencies, 21,000 according to CoinMarketCap, 12,000 according to CoinGecko, as regulations are currently gradually expanded and enforced worldwide in the coming years? There are a lot of cryptocurrencies. There were even a lot several years ago. I think there's going to be a lot of cryptocurrencies, and will continue to be a lot of cryptocurrencies, but they're not going to be a lot of important cryptocurrencies. Right? I can probably count on two hands the number of important cryptocurrencies, even though there's 21,000 nominally out there. Most of these do not have a large market capitalization, do not have a lot of trading volume, are not particularly used for anything. Even the market cap that they do have is a little bit fake because if anyone tried to sell into it, it would collapse. So I think they'll exist there. They exist primarily on permissionless blockchains. It's hard to stop them from existing. But it is also hard to imagine how they all go away, right? In fact, anyone that is launched, I think literally cannot go away because you'd have to be able to go take out that transaction. That transaction happened years ago, right? So they're not going to go away. They'll just become progressively inactive. Now, what's interesting is these numbers are going to skyrocket if you consider NFT tokens a form of cryptocurrency. So if you say the CryptoPunks is a cryptocurrency with 10,000 tokens, or Fidenzas are a cryptocurrency with 1,000 tokens. Well, if we start thinking of every NFT contract as a cryptocurrency, we are soon going to go into the millions of cryptocurrencies. I mean, the marketing department at the University of Nicosia a couple of days ago launched a new NFT contract where they're going to mint our marketing material as NFTs, so it's available to anyone in the NFT ecosystem. It's another contract with a new set of tokens. Theoretically, it's like a form of cryptocurrency. Now, it's not one that will ever have any economic value, but strictly speaking, it kind of is. So I'm not sure the number's going to go down per se. I think the number probably, mathematically, the number can only go up because nothing can go away, but people can do new ones. But I do believe most of these will not have a lot of value, right? And so that to me is the interesting question, right? How many cryptocurrencies will have meaningful value, and why? The space is now getting more complicated, right? This class is focused on digital currencies, which is where Bitcoin started. It is primarily a currency with those three, or a form of commodity money with those three characteristics. Ether is a transactional fee for smart contracts, and many people in the Ether community are also promoting it as a store of value. Ether for sure is a medium of exchange in the Ether ecosystem. Most of the NFTs in the world are on Ether and are bought on Ethereum and are bought or sold with Ether. And to some degree is a unit of account for NFTs too, which is interesting. Then you have DeFi tokens, other blockchain tokens, NFT tokens, right? So I think we're going to have a very complicated landscape. What might drive value will differ based on the usage case of the NFTs. And this, I don't think is going to change. I think it's just going to get more complicated. And bit by bit, you'll have to spend more and more time to keep up with it, which is to be expected. If we think cryptocurrency is as big, crypto assets, blockchain, is as big an innovation as the internet, you wouldn't expect that you can just take one course or track one thing and know everything going on in the internet, right? A lot of things going on in the internet. The internet is now outside the scope of any single person understanding it. Cryptocurrency is probably already there as well, right? Like, we know a lot about cryptocurrency, crypto assets here at UNIC, but there are absolutely things going on that we don't know are happening, that we don't notice, that we don't have a good handle on, and that will continue. It'll become more so. People will make more experiments, and in some countries might ban them, and some countries might regulate them, and some countries might allow them, and it'll depend on the country and the type of token it is. But I do think we're probably still heading towards more complexity, more things happening than less complexity. I think I'm going to end there. I'm just checking the questions again and see if there's one that would be a good one to wrap up with? No, I think they're all broadly around the same topic. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the rest of the course. The next 6 sessions are going to be with Andreas Antonopoulos. Andreas is going to go to the fundamentals of how Bitcoin reaches consensus, how to do a Bitcoin transaction, and how it works from a technical perspective. It is the part of the course that if you're new, I think you're going to have to work the hardest. Okay? It is the part that I think is the least intuitive. It's the part that you will have to get your hands dirty and do things to learn. But I think it is also the part that if you get through it and pay attention and do the work, get your hands dirty, you will actually have learned something very, very important and very, very practical. It will give you a fundamental understanding that will help you with everything else. So it's really, really important. Andreas is awesome. He's an amazing educator. He's more disciplined in his sessions than I am, so he will keep you very tight on his sessions. And I think it's going to be an excellent 6 sessions. Then we have 5 sessions at the end that are we're back in the application world, of which 3 will be taught by George, and 2 will be taught by me. And I'm probably going to get yelled at by George and Lambis when I say this. George will definitely go through slides, and I think be a little bit more user-friendly than I am. I will still do my sessions this way. I would like you to please read the slides, ask questions in the LMS or in Discord in advance, work through specific topics, and then I would like to have a discussion in these sessions. There's a whole team of us here to help. I think to get the most out of this course, you have to read the material a few days before the session. I do not think you can get the most out of this course and read it for the first time at the session. And our TAs are also quite knowledgeable, right? Don't think of this as the one opportunity you have to learn something is in the session. So if you read something and you don't understand it, ping Lambis, ping Manos, ask your classmates, get active in Discord, because the reality is people are at different levels of sophistication, even though it is an intro course. And what we've seen over the years, people will be at different levels of sophistication on different topics. There'll be someone who understands how to do a Bitcoin transaction but doesn't know anything about central banking. Or there'll be someone who understands central banking and doesn't know the first thing about how to download a Bitcoin wallet. And so what I would share is that the whole team is here to help. Everyone is here to help. And use all of us as a resource to make sure you learn everything you're hoping to learn out of this course. So with that, I'll wrap up for today. I want to, on my behalf, welcome you to the University of Nicosia. I'd like to welcome you to this course. I'm going to hand you over to my great colleagues for the next several sessions, and then I'll be back in touch with you later in the semester. Bye-bye, everyone, and thank you very much.